Good evening, everyone. I want to call the Windsor Board of Education special meeting for Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018 to order. If we'd all please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. And just as a reminder to everyone, Win TV is taping the meeting tonight. It is streaming live now on Win TV's YouTube page at youtube.com/Windsor TV 5. It is also broadcasting live on Win TV channel 95. This program will be rebroadcast on channels 5, 95, and 96 and available on demand on Win TV's YouTube page. Next item on the agenda is audience to visitors. Anyone wishing to address the board may come forward, sign in on the sheet at the table, and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Just as a reminder that no remarks or comments can be made against any employees of the Windsor Public Schools or children outside of your own. When there are 30 seconds, Mr. Fury will hold up a red card as an indication for you to start winding up your comments, and at 3 minutes, he will hold it up permanently. With that being said, is there anyone wishing to be recognized under audience to visitors? Anyone wishing to be recognized? Seeing and hearing none, we will close audience to visitors. Next agenda item is the graduation date for 2018 and last day of school for 2017-2018. Dr. Cook?
Yes, thank you, President Lockhart. It's always great to get to this point of the school year after April 1st, and we're about as close to that as we can be. The board is able to set a graduation date, and that holds firm. So no matter what would happen from here on out, we're able to hold firm that graduation date. And so we are proposing that the board set Wednesday, June 13th as the date for graduation. We have a hold on the Bushnell. That is the last date. That's the latest we could go at the Bushnell. They have other events that week and then the week following. So as the preferred site for graduation, we would recommend Wednesday, June 13th for graduation. The other consideration we're asking for tonight is based on 7 snow days, we would be normally ending on June 20th for students. That would be the 182nd student day, 187th day for teachers. And so we are proposing that for kindergarten through grade 11 that we actually hold Tuesday, June 19th for the last day for students. That would be, as tradition in Windsor, is an early release day. And we have worked with both our administrators and our teachers unions and discussed this proposal. What we would be doing is on the afternoon of June 19th, we'd be able to have a staff meeting with teachers run by the principal to conclude the school year, discuss school improvement plans, efforts for next year, and have some celebrations of successes this year. Wednesday, June 20th would basically turn into a professional development day for staff. So we'd have professional development in the morning, followed by some time for teachers to work in the classroom. And then, as traditionally is the case, teachers would be released on an early release on that afternoon after they check out their classrooms with the principals. So that's traditionally what would happen on the last day of school. So basically what we're doing under that proposal is to decrease the student school year by 1 day and allow us to have more time with our staff to wrap up the year. And so we are asking you to also approve that tonight.
All right, before I recognize Mr. Fury, I'm just letting the board know these will be 2 separate motions. That being said, Mr. Fury?
Yes, I move that the Board of Education approve Wednesday, June 13th, 2018 as the graduation date for the class of 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Fury, second by Ms. Black-Burke, that we set the graduation date for Wednesday, June 13th, 2018. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Mr. Fury.
Yes, I move that the Board of Education approve a change to their approved 2017-2018 calendar, setting Tuesday, June 19th, 2018, as the last day of school for students in grades kindergarten to grade 11, and the last day for teachers would be Wednesday, June 20th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Mrs. Furry, second by Ms. Fissel, to set the calendar for Tuesday, June 19th, 2018 as the last day of school for students from K to 11, and the last day for teachers will be Wednesday, June 20th, 2018. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Dr. Cook, thank you very much for bringing those recommendations forth.
Thank you.
And you may now proceed with preparing the class of 2018.
Thank you.
Dr. Cook.
Yes, thank you. For the Next Generation School and District Accountability Report, I'm going to approach the desk and start us off with the presentation. So thank you for the opportunity. We are very excited to share this information with you tonight. Dr. Oliver and I worked on the district-wide part of the presentation, and she'll be with me to answer questions, but we are really trying to have the focus on the schools, and so I will relatively quickly run through the district-wide presentation, but just explaining, because it applies to all the schools, how the report works on a kind of a higher level. I know we provided the board with information and presented this to the board last year on two occasions. With new board members, we want to make sure we cover all that. We are asking, which is not typically the case, because we like to have the presentations as interactive, but in order for all schools to have an equal amount of time, and I'm holding them very tightly to their time frame, we ask that you hold questions, if at all possible, to the end.
Well received.
And so we'd greatly appreciate that, so that will allow us to cover all the schools. So as you are aware, and we're looking now at our 2015-2016 report, there are 20 indicators that the board receives under the accountability report. And through those indicators, we are tied with the board goals. So we provided the board goal report as well. But as we focus on the 20 indicators, not all schools, as you will see, are rated on all of those indicators. High school being the one with the most amount of indicators rated, but not all schools, include Pequannock and Oliver Ellsworth in particular, are only rated on attendance. So we've included some other data for the board. But there are 20 indicators that were developed through this comprehensive work of the state 3 years ago, and they are broad-reaching. They look at areas that we were very pleased to hear are part of this, such as art access and graduation rates and post-secondary entrance to colleges. So we were pleased to be part of this work, and I think we will show tonight that we've had some pretty steady improvement in that work, leading to our rating this year. And so just a little bit about the report. The index or rate is basically the score of the district or school, if you're looking at a school report, on that indicator. And it ranges from 0 to 100 or 0% to 100%, depending on what that indicator is. And so everything is converted to that. So when you're looking at an elementary school, an SBAC score is converted to a 0 to 100 rating, and then when you're looking at the high school, SAT scores are converted to that rating. The target is the ultimate target established by the State Department for school districts across Connecticut. And I always point out when we talk about the target, this is not meant to, no school or district is going to reach the target in all those areas. There's no district that's in the high 90s or the mid 90s even as they look at that. So we're always going to expect that there's going to be areas as we're trying to move towards that target. The target varies depending on the on the measure, and so it weights, for instance, growth more than the actual score. So when we look at, say, an elementary school, they're going to look at the growth of students on SBAC and weight that higher than the actual score on SBAC for that particular school year. And we, again, have felt that that's something very beneficial to Windsor Public Schools because we have moved students, and we have a slide coming up just specifically on growth. Again, no district will be at 100%, and nor does it mean, if you look at a district and you see a 75 rating, doesn't mean it's a C or it's not an A through F type of rating. The points earned on the indicator are the number of points basically based on that target. So if you're looking at a 62 out of 75, that means that the district on that particular indicator received 41.9 points out of 50 maximum points. So in another way, it's a percentage of the points earned on that indicator. It also provides that to you in the maximum number of points that you can see. So the columns really tie into each other, and so the points earned are showing you how many points were received out of the maximum. And those ratings go from 50 to 100. And then the percentage is just simply converting the percentage of the points earned versus the maximum. So it gives you another way to look at that in how we are comparing with the state. And then ultimately the district on the accountability index receives a percentage that we're looking at. So in this particular year, on this particular report, Windsor Public Schools had 71.4%. That's the 15-16. And then the state average index represents the average performance indices and rates earned by the district across the state. So that's really the state average. So as we look at that, we get to see in each of those categories how Windsor compares to the state. And then you'll notice too, under the indicators, number 3 is not part of the report because that is just the participation rate for all students and high needs students, and it's reported to the district in a different manner. Windsor's never had an issue with the number of students or the percentage taking the test, so that's that is a way where you can receive a reduction or a concern by the state if you were having a lower percentage than 95 participate in the test, but that's never been a problem for us. So that brings us to last year's report. We did some work around this, and so you'll see the district for 15-16 was at 71.4%. This again is all the indicators, and the schools will share both 15-16 and 16-17 with you. As we look at the 16-17, you'll see the increase. We, as a district, had a 2.4% increase, or 32.2 points of the total points earned. The entire state of Connecticut's increase on the average increase was 0.1%. So as a state, we were pretty flat, but in Windsor we had a pretty nice jump in terms of the rating. I mentioned growth, and this is really where we are particularly proud of the results from this past year, in that in all 4 of the indicators where growth is measured, and those again were the highest rated, highest weighted by the State Department, indicating to us that growth is the most important to them. We saw an increase above the state average in growth. So said pretty simply, students in Windsor are growing more than students across the state. And we believe that's due to all the work we've done with curriculum, with instruction, providing Tier 3 supports, Tier 2 supports. So we were very proud of that, and that was a big reason for our movement. And one of the highlights you'll hear later is John F. Kennedy being a school of distinction, and their work with high needs students and growth in that. Those students led to that rating. And then finally, just a few districts to show some comparison. The board had asked for this last time we presented data around the district accountability, and you know, certainly a fair question to see as how we rate. As we've been sharing, we are above state average, so you'll see that Windsor is above state average, and we provided some alliance and non-alliance districts to just provide some some continuity and information for you, increased information about where our scores came in. And you know, as I said before, you're not seeing districts in the 90s. You know, the typically high achieving DERG A or B districts are in the low 80s or to mid 80s. So, you know, if we continue to see growth, if we saw another growth of 2.4% or in that neighborhood for next year, we would jump a considerable number of districts. And so we're very hopeful that our continued growth efforts are going to lead to those continued strong results. And so we were pleased. You know, certainly CREC and the state average are places we're constantly looking at. So we were pleased to, you know, have a score that pushed us, you know, significantly higher than those areas. So with that said, as I said, we wanted to really focus on the schools tonight and provide information. We did receive some questions from board members and have incorporated that into our presentations, and so hopefully we're able to address that. But with that said, I'm going to ask Tracy Peterson to come forward and share performance results with you.
Bless you.
God bless.
Because school people follow such good directions, Virginia and I are going to do it together. All right, and the reason, as you can imagine, is our data looks very similar in the types of things that we report out. So it's just as easy to be here together. So as Craig mentioned, at Quantick and at Oliver Ellsworth, as far as the district accountability report is concerned, our main goal is around absenteeism. And I won't go into great detail about why that's important, because it's really simple. You can't learn if you don't come to school, right? So we really want to work hard. And as you can see in 2015, 2016, 10% of our students were considered chronically absent, which means they missed 10% or more of the school year. And for our high needs students, that number was exactly 18%. But in 2016, 2017, we reduced both of those categories by half, going down to 5.7% for all students and 10.6% for our high needs students. And we attribute much of that to really intensifying and increasing our protocols around absenteeism. Letters, phone calls, meetings with families, and is in a comprehensive way. So it's not just me making the phone calls, but teachers having conversations at parent-teacher conferences around attendance, having our school social worker and our Family Resource Center liaison also work with families to not just say, hey, listen, come to school, but to spend some time really uncovering why is it that the child is missing a lot of days. So, you know, as is the nature with children who are between the ages of 3 and 7, they get sicknesses. Sometimes they're out for lengthy periods of time for those sicknesses, but we are uncovering different reasons why families are absent and really trying to strategize and put some pieces into place to help support all of our families get children to school. So as Craig mentioned, we don't have academic data on the district accountability report because we primarily assess our students in a standardized way through STAR. And so this is some data about which we are really proud. So we take STAR Math and STAR Reading and Early Literacy. As some of you may have heard us say before, kindergartners do not take an isolated STAR Math test, so that's why you don't see data as it relates specifically to kindergarten. But in September, our whole school numbers were around 57%, reminding you that that's a baseline assessment. After the summer, after some summer slide, getting kids back into the swing of things, we're really excited to report that In January, our whole school math data was at 80% of our students at or above the district benchmark. And I'll talk a little bit later why, but we're extremely excited to see some of the data looking like this. First grade, you can see in September started out at 72%. By January, they're at 84%, meaning more students moving into the band of being at or above the benchmark. And in second grade, 42% start out in September, and then by January, 77% of them have made our district benchmarks. So it's really great data. This is the first time we've been in the 80s at this time of the year in mathematics, so as a school, we're proud of that. It's also an increase over last year. Last year's whole school data was, we ended the year at 68% of our students at or above the benchmark. So we're making nice, we're already above where we ended the year last year. Our reading and early literacy data, likewise, students start the year out at a baseline number of around 59%, and now in January have moved up to 81%. While we value mathematics totally, we also believe that reading is kind of that cornerstone skill that really gives children access to all other content areas, right? If you're not a strong reader, you can't do well with mathematics, science, social studies, and all of the other content areas. Also, so likewise, you can see our kindergartners don't take a September assessment. One of the things we learned very quickly about kindergarten, last year we did do a September assessment, and it's very interesting to watch a kindergartner in September trying to take an assessment on the computer. I love telling this story, so if you heard it before, we would sit kids down in front of like their Chromebook and they start swiping, and we're like, nope, that screen does not swipe. So we have to kind of get them used to the technology so that their scores aren't a reflection of how well they can manage the technology, right, but how much they actually do know. So the decision was made to not test kindergartners in September, but you can see come January, 86% of them are at or above the benchmark, very close to where they left last year. Last year, 91% of our students in kindergarten were at or above the benchmark, so they're making strong progress in that direction. First and second grade, 63 and 82% September and January respectively. Second grade, 55 and 74%. So we're also really proud of making that kind of progress in first and second grade. I'd really like to highlight, though, our second grade numbers. It's the first time at this time of the year where second grade has been in the 70s. So we attribute a lot of that to, we've made some personnel changes, and by that I simply mean moving some people around the building to balance the teams off, to balance the skills and strengths of the different people in the building, and we believe it's had a really positive effect. We also had 2 brand new teachers in second grade last year, so it's amazing what a year of experience will do for your ability to reach even more students. So we are proud of their changes there. Ultimately, we believe that the reason we feel so strongly about making this kind of achievement, one of the things that we know about achievement is your tier 1 instruction needs to be at that 80-85%, right, to say that it's effective for the majority of your students. And we also believe that we set Clover up to make great progress. All the hard work is right here at the primary buildings. And so we feel that our success is tied to what our intermediate sister schools do, and we want to send them the strongest possible students that we can. So in terms of areas of greatest improvement academically, we've been able to maintain high levels of achievement in reading and early literacy. That's important to us because we don't ever want to get into the habit of saying this was a particularly strong or not strong group of students. We believe that a student's progress is really primarily impacted by the work of the adults, not necessarily whether or not you get a strong quote-unquote class or not, but our work impacts their achievement. And so being able to maintain that achievement from year to year really is an indicator that your tier 1 practices are being effective. And we definitely see that in reading and early lit. Around equity, some of our greatest areas of improvement, when you look at those numbers in absenteeism, that huge gap between all students and students in high need, that is our work of equity. And so one of the things that we've been doing with our students who are identified as being as receiving specialized instruction, we're really monitoring their achievement as well to ensure that they are making progress and growth. And so we've seen tremendous growth in that student population. So we are proud of their work, our work there as well as eliminating disparities between high need students and all students in English language arts. In 2015-2016, only 57% of our students who were identified as receiving specialized services were meeting our benchmarks, and as of last year, 70% of those students were meeting benchmarks. So those are numbers that demonstrate we're continuing down a really strong path, and we believe for this year, still looking at that same data, pulling those students out, we see that same type of achievement being possible again this year, so we're proud of that. In terms of climate, we've increased home visits to offering all of our kindergarten families. If you remember, it was kind of on a volunteer basis that first year. We dibbled and dabbled in making home visits with families. This year, all of my kindergarten teachers made home visits, and I believe the number was somewhere around 75% of those visits were made with families. And so that building that relationship, making that connection, finding out how we can best serve our family needs, we believe is a really great way to start their experience at Pequannock School. We already talked about reducing the number of students who are chronically absent and maintaining high levels of satisfaction with our families. That's based on our climate survey data. Really trying to maintain what we've accomplished is a median score of 4. 5 is the highest you can get. 4 is meaning they're having above average experience at your school. And looking at all groups, seeing that median score of a 4 based on our climate survey was something that we are really pleased about. In terms of strategies for improvement, one of the reasons I think our math data is looking so positive, that this is the first year that we have really focused on math. Our first 3 years, we had a really strong focus on reading and literacy, and this year we kind of pushed our focus in our school improvement plan around math in combination with Dr. Oliver's office and our STEM director, the implementation of math workshop across the whole school, kindergarten through 2nd grade, we believe has had a really positive impact on those math numbers. Our teams were excited to do it. Some people had already been implementing different pieces, and so collectively coming together and implementing a math workshop model is really we think is a nice correlation between the numbers. Also, implementing a preschool curriculum, C4L has been a great addition to our preschool program, giving teachers some continuity, some similar experiences between all of our preschool classes, including our half-day morning and afternoon programs. As well as we are in the accreditation process, so hoping to achieve that accreditation later this month is when our scheduled visit is. Again, through Dr. Oliver and our directors, along with our math and literacy coach in the building, every teacher this year at Pequannock has had the opportunity to have one-on-one coaching. So the way this works is the coaches break up the year into different cycles, and at one point or another in the school year, a teacher will have a one-on-one coaching with with our coaches. So what happens is they meet with the coach, they set goals, the coach will come into their classroom, observe their practice, give them feedback, come back within that cycle, give them more feedback, and it's been a really nice way to see continuity across the grade level. Teachers, I have a great number of teachers who have less than 5 years of teaching experience, so to have that opportunity to work closely with the coach really enhances their practice to deliver effective instruction for our students. Another area that we've implemented this year is really some consistent and enhanced practices in all of the beautiful academic acronyms, of which you will become completely and totally aware of as board members. I'm sure you've seen them over and over again. MTSS, our multi-tiered systems of support for students. PLCs, which are our professional learning communities, groups of teachers that meet after school to really examine their practices, put common practices into play. One of the things that came out of this year through our PLC work is in our first grade team, noticed that there were a small group of children who were really struggling with phonics instruction, and we have the benefit of having a veteran teacher who this is her strength. So what she did was she took 2 or 3 students from every first grade classroom, first thing in the morning for 20 minutes, met with them and did phonics instruction, and every single one of them made significant growth through this kind of PLC work. CORE is something that we have in the building where we sit and talk about our identified students who receive special education services. Really, this is where we've been monitoring their achievement as well as their services, ensuring that we are collectively offering all students really high academic and quality experiences at the school, along with our preschool, meeting regularly with our preschool teachers and teams to ensure that they have the kind of support. I think sometimes people believe the younger the child, the easier the work, and I would argue the younger the child, the more challenging the work. And so we really want to make sure that we're offering both the students, their families, and those teachers the kind of support they need on a consistent basis to be successful with our students. Strategies for improvement include equity work, and as I mentioned, our equity work right now is being focused on our students who receive special education services. I've been working with Steve Carvalho and Angela Aaronworth, our elementary special ed supervisor, to really think about our programming for our students and really trying to change our mindset and not putting students into programs, but programming for individual students, which may sound like a subtle change, but it's a really important change, right? If you have a program and you want to stick Tracy in that program, it's kind of like, listen, we're going to stick you in that program the best we can and try to make it work for you. What we'd rather do is say, what kind of programming does Tracy need to be successful, and then creating that program around the student. Engaging in mindset professional development, we sent 3 classroom teachers and our math coach to a growth mindset workshop as it involves mathematics. They really had an enriching experience and then came back to the building and offered that professional development to the rest of the building, doing activities with the teachers, really talking about brain development, what it means to have a growth mindset, and then really going into classrooms and seeing people implementing those strategies right away. Lastly, we totally believe, I know Craig has spoke to you a little bit about some of the work we've begun around the 21st century skills and the profile of a Windsor Public School graduate, and so we've begun conversations in our building around what would that look like at the primary level. I can't say enough about how much I believe that work starts with us, right? That we want to build that mindset. We don't want kids to go into shock. They get to the middle school and then we want to teach them those things, but we believe as early as our 3 and 4-year-olds, how do we teach them to collaborate? How do we teach them to be independent learners? How do we teach them to advocate for themselves even at that level? Around climate, we talked a little bit about our enhanced protocols around absenteeism. But we've also been doing something that might seem simple, right? Enhanced and coordinated communications. So one of the ways to best communicate with families, right? Sometimes I can send you a robocall, right, Mr. Dobler? But it's also really important that teachers are in mass ways communicating with their families. So this year what we've really tried to do is every teacher has a way to communicate with all of their families at once, whether it be through a Remind app. They have something called Balloons that they use. Sometimes they just use a group email or a text, but really making certain that we talk about, okay, I'm gonna do the robocall this week on Tuesday, you send your communication out on Friday, so parents are hearing and families are hearing a consistent communicated message about what the goals are that we are trying to communicate with them. And then lastly integrated family engagement opportunities. So one of the things I like to say is Aquanic families like fun. And so what we try to do is engage and empower our families in fun ways. So one example of that is you have heard before about our partner meetings. And so we've continued to have partner meetings, but this year we called our spring meeting a family fun night. And families came out, learned about ways in which they could play games with their children that would enhance and empower them to support their students at home. And we had over 300 people attend that family fun night. So we were really excited. They had a great time watching families work together and play with their students, and at the same time enhance their ability to support their children at home. This Friday, or actually this Thursday, we do something at Pequannock. We have a First Friday event we're doing on Thursday, since we figured the Friday before vacation might not get a lot of people. We're doing a STEM learning night, and basically we're taking many of the activities that we were so grateful to receive from Amazon through their generous donation for us to have a maker space. We're gonna place those out and have different stations, and our families are gonna get an opportunity to go with their children through those stations and to participate in those STEM activities. So again, combining the learning with the fun in a way that continues to engage our families and students and support them being successful at Pequannock School. And that is us.
Thank you, Tracy. We'll lead you into Oliver Ellsworth. When you look at Oliver Ellsworth and as Tracy had mentioned, the pre-K to 2, we do the chronic absenteeism. When you look at the chronic absenteeism of all students, for 15-16, it was at 4.4, and you'll notice the next slide, it was 7.7 for high needs. For 15-16, it's 6.9, and for 16-17, it is 8.8. There was an increase in the rate of chronic absenteeism and being new to the position as I reflect on what was happening last year within even some of the processes of how attendance is done in the office. A contributing factor could be a change in the administrative assistant support, so that could have been a learning curve in that piece right there. What I would like to note, or have you note, is that we were still significantly below the state averages in both high needs and all student areas. All student areas was 7.7, where the state was 9.9, and Oliver Ellsworth was 8.8 for high needs, and where the state was 15.8. As we move to STAR Math, grades 1 and 2, as Tracy had alluded to, kindergarten students do not take the math. In grade 1, you'll see in September we had 169 students out of 110, 63% were at benchmark, and in January we had 178, 66% were at benchmark. End of year, January, grade 1 was at 61%, so we are already above the end of year math benchmark for last year. Grade 2, you'll see in September, they were at 41%, and benchmark right now in January is 54%. Again, last year, end of year, grade 2 was at 68%, so we're making some progress there. If you look at whole school, again, benchmark, we're at 60%. When we're looking at the percentages, though, we also want to highlight the urgent intervention, the number of students that were urgent intervention or percentages. And as you look at urgent intervention and go up to intervention on watch, you'll notice that in September for urgent intervention, for example, we were at 8%, we're in January, we're at 5%, and as you move on up on watch, 26, 24%, we had 8% increase in that. Again, kindergarten, we look at kindergarten students based on unit assessments and daily work. We attribute the increase from last year to this year to obviously the new math curriculum that Tracy had alluded to, the math workshop implementation. We also have a math tutor at Oliver Ellsworth, and one woman, we would like more math tutors, just putting that in there, who works with the math coach as well, and they discuss progress monitoring, those things that are happening. We've seen an increase in what's happening with students in math. Again, one-to-one coaching cycles and look-ahead sessions, and I'll speak to the improvements in a minute. 4-star reading and early literacy. You'll notice that in kindergarten, I put November, I have September as the highlighted of the second column, but kindergarten is tested in November. In November, we had 60 out of 100 students, which is 60% at the benchmark, and in January, we had 76 out of 104, which is 73%. One question that was asked by the board when looking at this information, they said there was a discrepancy in the number of students for kindergarten in September at 100, in January 104. We had 4 new students enter kindergarten in the months of December and January, so that's the discrepancy in the number there. Grade 1, we had 71% at benchmark in September and 108 at, 60 at benchmark, in September and 79 at benchmark, so 71% and 73% respectively, and grade 2, 57% and 70% respectively. Again, the thing that we look the most at, as we drill down in grades, we're looking at the whole school average. If you look at the whole school for September, we're at 53%, and in January, we are at 70%. If we compare this to the percentage at the end of the year for 16-17, we had 80% of the whole school at benchmark at the end of the year, and right now we have the whole school at 70%. I would like to comment that in grade 1, as we had, if we look at the numbers, 84 students in September and 108 students in January, the same thing with grade 2. In grade 1, we had 24 students in September take the early literacy test, and in grade 1 in January, only 9. So we had a significant improvement with students in grade 1. Moving up the ladder from urgent intervention to benchmark. Grade 2, we had 8 students taking the early lit test in September, and now we have 2. And those 2 students are students ELL or a student that needs additional assistance. We are proud of our progress to date, and we will keep moving, and I will speak to our greatest improvements, which will include the reading pieces. Our areas of greatest improvement, if you'll notice, academic, our high levels of achievement in reading as noted by the STAR. We contribute that to, at the beginning of the year, the kindergarten reading support. What we did this year, Oliver Ellsworth, for the first portion of the year, we pushed in, we had reading tutors push into the classrooms. There was no pullout for kindergarten. The purpose of that, or reasoning behind that, was the building relationships within the classroom is very important at the beginning of the year. So while the relationships are being built with the teacher and the classmates, we have reading teachers and tutors pushing in and supporting the work that's being done by the teachers already. So the children that receive that support are doing the work that's already being done by the teacher in the classroom, just a little more focused. And then also the teachers the students that are chosen to work with reading teachers or tutors is based on their teachers' observations and also assessments being done within the classroom. And then small group support by reading teachers or tutors. A highlight is curriculum planning as well for the academic piece, and that includes look-ahead sessions, collab time, weekly planning with instructional coaches, which is voluntary, but all of our teachers are volunteering to do that. And then grade level planning for instruction, and that's where teachers are creating student materials for the teachers' use and the students' use. If we're looking obviously at preschool, the NIAC accreditation, we received NIAC accreditation in April. It was a huge, in March, which was a huge celebration. It was, as Tracy knows, a lot of work on everybody's part, from district, central office personnel down to classroom teachers, including paraprofessionals. A huge thing, and also the implementation of the C4L curriculum, and which supports and I want to make this clear about our preschool programs. Our preschool programs, both at Pequannock and at Oliver Ellsworth, are integrated programs that focus on kindergarten readiness for students with diverse needs. And I just want to make that clear. It's not childcare. It's not a place to babysit. It's an integrated program that focuses on kindergarten readiness. With respect to climate, decrease in chronic absenteeism, this has been a focus for Oliver Ellsworth, well, we saw an increase in the first few months this year as compared to last year, August through November. With the implementation of a specific attendance team, we saw a significant decrease from December to February. March numbers are not in yet, but we saw from even from 16-17, 16.4% in December down to 11, and then 11.5, obviously, down to 8 and 15% last year in February, down to 7.9% this year in February. And again, we attribute that to the team, a specific process that's in place, and then also letters and meetings with parents and phone calls and things like that. And then also with climate equity, and specific to equity, we're continuing the work with respect to the focus on ODRs, office discipline referrals, and reducing the disparities for students of color. And then within equity, again, there is a staff focus, and that is provided through administration, and it's a monthly focus during early release times where staff members in the building, we are reading articles, we're using protocols, we're conducting activities that are shared by the district leadership team, and it's a way to have a specific focus on adult perceptions and how we are looking at the students and the bodies that are in front of us. I will speak to that again because that's also a strategy for improvement. When we're looking at talent, one-to-one coaching cycles for all teachers, as Tracy had alluded to. All teachers are doing a one-to-one coaching cycle with both math and reading. And then also at OE, we have teachers providing professional development on the district level and the OE level. We had 7 staff members, I believe probably 8, that provided building level support, and also district PDEC, professional development committee sessions, everything from family engagement to reading strategies, to mentor reading. And then we will look at greatest improvement with respect to systems, MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports. We've streamlined the process, which has included creating norms, roles, and responsibilities, and a team action plan. And that team action plan provides documentation and purposeful direction for the group, along with the student support team, SST, student support team process implemented. And that's a formalized process for teachers to refer students who are of concern socially, behaviorally, or academically. And then on the building team side is, again, a streamlined process, norms, roles, and responsibilities. But then also our building data team work is focused and streamlined down to the professional learning communities, PLC, which all of this is driven by our school improvement plan. And we analyze and compare data, identify a focus area, create progress monitoring and informal checklists, select or develop strategies, and then use one-on-one or small groups. And then we reassess, we evaluate, we determine next steps. Also a part of this that we've found very successful is teacher surveys. We've implemented teacher surveys to guide the professional needs of the teachers around that specific focus, and we found that to be very beneficial for both staff and for students. And on to strategies for improvement. Academics, we will continue, obviously things that we are successful in, we will continue, but when we look at strategies for improvement in academics, teacher/coach meetings, and to differentiate instruction, this will continue to happen after STAR testing is done. The coaches and teachers one-on-one come together to analyze the data and then choose strategies and resources to differentiate instruction to students in the classroom. Look ahead sessions, again, in ELA and math, and those are sessions that are provided to grade level groups of teachers where they are looking ahead at the curriculum that's coming, what questions do they have, what resources do they need to create, and what lessons need to be tweaked or created, and they do that together. And then also with math workshop implementation, support around, since math has not improved as greatly as reading, math workshop implementation, station supports, mini lesson, tier 2 small group instruction, and again, math tutors, I'll put that in. Climate and equity, I put staff development because with respect to equity and the district focus, we're focusing on the mindset of the staff within the building. and their perceptions of the bodies that are in front of them. So we're really focusing on implicit or unconscious bias and starting to have some of those difficult conversations. So conversations are becoming uncomfortable, which we all feel need to happen in order to make some movement. And then community involvement, study circles this year, where we've had high school students, community members, parents, and staff members. We've had one this year, and one cycle is 2 days. Next year, we are planning on at least 2, if not 3 of those. Talent, we have Windsor Leadership Corps, where we have, this is where teachers are developing their talent and going outside. It's provided obviously within Windsor, but Windsor Leadership Corps. So it's a core group of people who want to find a way to improve either family engagement, opportunities for students. And for us in the building, this year we have 2 teachers doing a Husky Leadership Pack, where it's students who are being nominated, who are role models for a leadership pack, where they're going to be the role models for the school 1 day a week. They'll come into school, they will dress up, wear suits, dresses, whatever we need to do, and have them, not what need to do, that's what they're gonna do. And it will be a role model. So what we wanna do is we wanna start to highlight some of those people who are always doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's not a focus on just behavior and where we need to go for strategies for that, but highlighting really what's happening, and there's more good happening in the building than there are discipline issues. Staff-assisted equity efforts, tapping staff members to assist with the equity initiative, so it's not just administration top-down. As a matter of fact, I have 3 from the study circle who have volunteered, so I see that as a group effort because it's a building effort, it's not just an administrative effort. And then implementation this year of the advisory council team, and that's outside of PLC leaders and anybody else who's kind of in a leadership role within the building right now. It's a way for them to feel comfortable in the forefront, and it's a group of people that get together once a month with myself and Kim Woods, the assistant principal, to develop their capacity and talk about any ideas or concerns outside of, obviously, contract issues that they deem important. And it's a way to build relationships with those staff members as well. With systems, the multi-tiered systems of support, the leadership team development via the district implementation team, which is each building has a core leadership team outside of MTSS that is going to continue to be developed through the district implementation team, as support from EastCon is removed from us. And then our student support team development. That was an area of greatest improvement for us, but it's also an area that needs to obviously be focused, so the process for the staff is clear, and there's they already have ideas of how we can really include teachers in that process, so we're gonna look at that. And then lastly, building data team, obviously professional PLC process, fine-tuning that with fidelity of implementation, and that would be inclusive of a district data team system work that's happening right now. And then using implementation of fidelity checks and making sure that the work that's being done is what is that looking like, and making sure it is consistently being done, but then also implementing what we're calling walk-through look-fors. So based upon the focus area that's been delineated, we are going to be using those walk-through look-fors, and those people conducting those look-fors are team members who are teachers, staff members of the school, as well as coaches and then administration. And that's a way for us to look at, are we really seeing those things that are supposed to be implemented? If not, what do we need to do, and what support do we need to put in place to make that happen? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm just going to start by saying that last school year, we had an education consultant come work with us on our personalities, and he gave us this disc, and in that it said that I was a rule follower. So I am going to try my best to follow Dr. Cook's rules with the time. Okay.
Two of them.
I'm just starting there.
We got a duo here.
So anyways, I'm here to present about Clover Street School. And I guess I'll say, when I first received this year's accountability reports, the first thing you look for as the principal is that index, that overall rating, right? So I looked and I checked, and I'm like, it's slower than last year, so then I put it to the side. This is the truth.
Yeah.
I put it to the side, and then I 2 minutes later, I pulled it back over and really looked at it to see that we had made some really great improvement, even though our overall index number did dip a little bit. So you'll see that, in last year's report, I said that we had outperformed the state in 9 out of 13 categories, but this year it was actually 12 out of 13 categories. So, and then we had improved in the areas of the growth targets. Last year we had not exceeded the state in the growth targets for ELA and math, but this year we did. So that was a nice improvement. And the other thing that we did, I remember sitting in my goal-setting meeting with Craig, and we were going over these the indexes, and Craig said, Michelle, this is an easy 50 points right here. The chronic absenteeism, you can do it, you can do it. We didn't get to 50, but we're at 49.9, so I think we did a good job. And that really was with, and I'll talk about that in the strengths slide, but that was really about our attendance protocol and what we implemented last year. So we're pleased at what we've seen between the differences of the 2015, 2016, and 17 reports. You can go on to, yeah. I told you I'm moving along.
All right.
So, yeah. So if you look at our star reading for Clover Oak, I'd like to start by saying we have implemented, and you all know because it was presented before you, a new humanities curriculum. And with that, there's been a lot of professional development that our teachers have been engaged in with our coaches and with our humanities director, as well as with some outside consultants. So you'll see that for grade 3, their benchmark for this number, the percentage of students that met the benchmark in September for the district benchmark was 40%, and that was 41 out of 103 students. And then you'll see that we increased that number in January from 250 out of 105 students, and again, we had 2 more students that entered that grade level by the January assessment. And so we went from 40% to 48% of our students meeting the benchmark. And I'll go over all of it. So in grade 4, we increased from 45% to 58%, which was an increase of 13 students meeting the benchmark with 3 new students added to that grade level. And then in grade 5, we had a large increase as well, in which we had 36 out of 95 students in September meet the benchmark, and in January we had 51 out of 100 students meet the benchmark, going from 38% to 51%. And so I will say, in our years past, in our humanities curriculum, when we were looking at the STAR, our increases in the reading were always slightly lower than in math. And I mean the increases from, the September to the benchmark, we would see about a 5% increase overall in each grade level. But this year, and I'm going to really attribute it to the professional development and the work that the coaches and the directors are doing with the teachers and the coaching, that we have seen larger increases in our reading in the STAR. So that's really positive. And you hear Mary Kay saying, because that's been something that we are always comparing, well, what's going on in reading? Because math, we've always seen really good increases in our STAR assessments. But in reading, it's always been very minimal, 3, 4, 5 percentage points. But this year, with the new humanities curriculum, we've seen a nice improvement. You'll see that our whole school meeting the benchmark went from 41% to 52%, which was an increase of 11 percentage points. So I talked about some of the professional development. Our teachers have been engaged in look-ahead sessions, and you've heard that before. And they've been engaged across the district. So that means all of the grade 3 teachers are meeting together. But they're really spending time planning together. And I actually had a post-observation with a 3rd grade teacher today, and she was saying how in one of their last meetings that they're in contact with the JFK teachers with the units and the lessons that they're working on. So that's really good to hear that we're all on the same page with our new humanities curriculum. Mary Kay, you can go to the next slide. So for our STAR math, you'll see we've had some increases in all of the grade levels except for grade 5. In grade 3, we went from 49% of the students meeting benchmark in September to 59% of the students meeting benchmark. In grade 4, we went from 58% of the students to 69% of the students meeting benchmark. And in grade 5, we had 61% of our students meet the benchmark in September and in January. But what I would like to say about this is that grade 5 has been a grade in which we've struggled with our numbers in the past. And to see them at 61% meeting the benchmark is definitely kudos again to the coaches and to our director. We don't have a new math curriculum, but what they did is they revised the curriculum and they actually revised the scope and sequence of the units of how when they were being taught. But our teachers, like as you heard in the previous presentations, all of our teachers are engaged in one-on-one individual coaching with the coaches, and every teacher will have that opportunity by the end of the school year. You'll see our overall benchmark was 56% in September, and we increased to 63% in January. So I talked about earlier that we outperformed the state in 12 of 13 categories, and again, the previous year we outperformed them in 9 out of 13, excuse me. And the category that is the same, that one category is the science. But I have faith this year because we have dedicated science units, whereas in the past, not that they weren't doing science, but it was embedded in our ELA curriculum. Now our STEM teachers are teaching science, right? Those are the teachers that are teaching math and science. So they're teaching, they have 4 dedicated units that they are teaching. So I am looking forward to seeing what we do with this year with our 5th grade NGSS assessment. There was an increase in growth targets for for all of our students in ELA and math, and that was where that category I said that we improved in. And then we had an increase in our math performance for all of our students. And again, I attribute that to our individual coaching. And something we did differently at Clover Street School last year is when we have our PLC meetings, they have 3 meetings after school outside of their staff meeting. And 1 is a collaboration, and then 2 are usually PLC meetings. But at Clover Street School, since we are departmentalized, I've changed them to have 1 grade level PLC meeting where they're meeting with all of the teachers, and then there's 1 subject level PLC meeting. So at least the teachers at the grade levels, at all of the grade levels in math, meet at least once a month. All of the humanities teachers at all of the grade levels meet together at least once a month, just to see what practices are going on. This was especially important with our math workshop implementation, because everybody's at different levels there. And so they get to hear what other teachers are doing, and then have opportunities to go into their classrooms if they would like as well. And another thing that we did differently was with our chronically absentee students. And that was the attendance protocol. We all have, all of our schools have been really working on this. And you'll see, if you looked at our attendance protocol, they look very similar to each other. And this is the work that we've been doing with EastCon. But as Tracy mentioned earlier, we're sending home letters, we're making phone calls, and we're meeting with families to talk about how important their students being in school is. And our teachers are the ones that are sometimes bringing it to our attention, which is where you want it to come from, right? They'll say, hey, Michelle, this student, I had a teacher last year say, hey, Michelle, this student is getting picked up every day at 3:10. You don't think it's as a parent, you may not think, oh, it's only 15 minutes before the end of the day, but it might be and it happened to be during this child's intervention block. So it was the time that they were getting some individualized support. So we just had that conversation with the parent. The parent didn't realize it, didn't know. They were trying to get from one point to the next point. So it was about communicating for that parent. But that's an area, like I said, we picked up some points. Our index rate went from 6.4 to 5.1. You heard me mention math workshop implementation. That's one of the areas under academics that we are focusing on. And that is, so we've been doing Reader's Workshop, and our teachers are very familiar with that, but our teachers that have been teaching math have had that direct instruction model that they've been working on. So this year, and as well as last year, we've been working on the workshop implementation and really working on our workstations, our students being involved in workstations, and our students and our teachers teaching with that mini lesson format, which has been a struggle for some teachers, which is why the individual coaching is very important. So like I met with a teacher during their mid-year, and she was saying, I really need to have my coaching cycle with Mrs. Pratt because I'm struggling with this area. So I was able to share that with Mrs. Pratt during our coaches meeting to let her know, hey, this teacher would like to start coaching a little bit earlier because she's struggling in this area for math. Our new humanities curriculum, again, definitely am going to say has been an improvement for us as a district, not just as a school, and what we see our teachers doing, how they're working together, and how they're really utilizing the coaches' expertise, and then the coaches using their expertise. So I have a teacher who will, if you mention an idea or a thought, or she's very creative and she shares it with other teachers, not just at Clover, but also at Kennedy. She happens to teach both grades 3 and 5, so we're taking advantage of her creativity and we're taking advantage of her technology skills and how she supports and works with our students. Under school climate, one of the things we are working on in our school improvement plan is our student learning goals. You heard last year that that's part of the agency that we're focusing on as a district. So both Clover and JFK, we started that together. We've been working on this for 2 years, and that's really students understanding the importance of them having a goal, how it helps them in their own academic progress. And new for us this year is the implementation of weekly second step lessons. And both the intermediate schools got that in, February, January. I presented to staff in February. As a teacher, I actually taught Second Step 20 years ago, but it's a social emotional curriculum, and it covers topics anywhere from empathy to how to get along with students and how to speak up for yourself or how to speak up for a classmate if you see something that's not going on right. And they do a lot of role playing with Second Step, and Mrs. Ravinola bought an extra kit that you can look through afterwards to familiarize yourself with it. Under talent, what we have been doing is colleague-to-colleague observations for our unified arts teachers. Those are our special area teachers, our music, PE, library, strings, band, and art. So what they asked to do was to observe each other in their own craft, just to pick up some of their classroom management skills. Because they have all the same classes, but what might work for one of the teachers, they don't know about what they'd like to see in practice. So our teacher has gone and she's observed Mr. Farr, our PE teacher. Our music teacher has gone in and observed Ms. Sehan, our library media specialist. The other thing we're working on, as you keep hearing from everyone, is the one-to-one coaching of all of our humanities and STEM teachers. And then under systems, we put, our building data team put down, we wanted to be strategic in how we increased our family engagement opportunities. And the reason we put it under systems is because we had competing committees. So we had PTO, School Governance Council, and we had a family engagement team. So that was about the systems that we had working at Clover Street School. So we put it under systems rather than school climate. And we talked about we have to communicate better. We have to look at, so at the beginning of the year, we looked at all the family engagement activities that we are involved in. Okay, so what do we need to focus on? And who is really going to be the coordinator and the one who's going, or the committee that's going to really work on that? So our PTO kind of now is more of our fundraising committee, right? So they're helping us with, is that the time limit, Craig? Give me a time limit. No, it's okay. So they're helping us with I'm almost done. So we're helping us with our fundraising efforts, and making sure that all of our students have the same opportunities. And so, for example, they're supporting our grade 5. They're going on a trip to Sturbridge Village, so they're paying. There is a fee for our parents and our students, but they're paying a good portion of that to help supplement that field trip. And they're doing that through their fundraising efforts. Our School Governance Council has kind of taken the lead on our family engagement activities because the person who was over our family engagement committee left us midway through the year, so our School Governance Council kind of took that over. And so we're really, really focusing on how we're going to get our families out. And so my staff is doing personal invitations. I actually use Class Dojo, so we use Class Dojo in our school, so I am connected to all of the classrooms, and I can send out a message, I can push out a message to all parents who are on that, which I find to be very effective, I should say, because then I can see, it also tells you how many people viewed it, I get likes on my comments, and I usually just do it for like whole school activities. Yeah, and I'm done.
Right.
Just want to say.
All right, so on to JFK. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you guys for inviting us here. We're so excited to be here. We are. All right. So what I'm just going to highlight on this, I know you had a chance to look at this in advance. We'll just go to the next one, if you will, please. Michelle, so 69.7 was our overall. We were very excited that we increased 5% from last year, and as Dr. Cook stated, we were a school distinction, which I don't know if you're aware of what that means. It means only 120 schools out of the state of Connecticut were given this based on whatever attribute they were. We were found for our high needs growth, which is something near and dear to my heart, because it's really important not only for every student to make a year's growth, but some students need to make significant more growth if they are behind. And that is it's a team effort. Principal Hurl was a part of that school last year, so I'm expecting big things from those kids coming up. So
Pressure's
going,
on.
right? So that was exciting to see. If you could move to the next slide, please. Areas of greatest growth. Overall, like I said, the accountability index increased. Just like Michelle and Clover, I was excited. We increased in 12 out of 13 of our school indicators, and we exceeded the state average for 11 out of 13. Also very exciting. Our math high index performance increased, as you will see up there, 5.3 for the index. And then the science increased, which actually surprised me because, as Michelle stated, we really didn't have a formal science every single day block. So it was kind of interesting to me that did increase, but I know what the work I've been seeing with the new curriculum, it's gonna definitely grow substantially in the next few years. The growth, for our growth targets, you'll see for the ELA and the math, for all students and high needs for math for both, have increased significantly too, which we're very excited about, and especially that math, that 13%. It's nice to see those children that need that gap closed. It's a heavy lift to close that gap as they grow up in years. One of the biggest things I was very excited about is chronic absenteeism, as you heard from the other principals tonight. It's really important that the kids need to be in school in order to learn. And so my personal vision of JFK is that JFK is a place where everyone wants to be, doesn't have to be, but we want to be there. Teachers, students, parents. So that's something that I strive for, and we're trying to build that social, emotional focus there so that students are feeling a part of something, a part of a community. Go to the next one. So this is our data, and we like to really focus on the children, so you notice the actual numbers of children next to you, so you can see the growth from the bands from September to January. Our urgent intervention definitely decreased, so we are closing those and moving kids across the band. You'll see how their numbers are changing and they're going in the right direction. We made nice growth from September to January. We are currently trending higher than we were last year at this time of the year. We're shooting to be in the high 70s by the end of the year. It is a really rigorous goal, but that's what we need to do. We need to, like Tracy stated, you really are looking at being in the 85% range for at or above, so we are pushing ourselves and our students every day to achieve at the highest level. Go to the next one. So the math, again, we had nice growth in there, and we are trending higher than last year. And again, if you notice our urgent intervention area, it's going in the right direction. We're moving those students out and up so that they can achieve and progress to their highest ability each year. So strategies for improvement. A lot of these things we are currently doing, but we know we can improve and make it even better. As I stated earlier, it's really important for me that school climate is very positive. So one of the things we talked about this year, we've been pushing on students. We did a lot last year around mindset and the power of yet, how you may not be able to do something yet, but you always add that word, or if you get frustrated, I can't do it, you remind the kids yet, and that you will do it, you will be successful. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, but you will. It's that mindset. One of the things we've been trying to really build is the pride in our school and our community. We have houses that we are trying to see. It's still a little messy. We're still kind of getting it organized. It's really hard because at one time on Friday, the entire school is moving into their houses. So it's interesting. But there's 8 houses, and all the teachers and the students have been sorted so that it's building relationships. So if I'm a 5th grade teacher, I'm going to know some 3rd grade kids or 4th grade and build that relationship. So every time they get up there, you already have that relationship built. So it's been really interesting. The kids love it, the teachers love it, and it's really helped everybody kind of gain that place that you want to be there and you have a connection to somebody. And we talk about, one of the big things we talked about was reputation. And it ties into another thing we incorporated was we have 5-star classrooms at JFK. So we talk about how if you go to a hotel or a restaurant, you want to go to the 5-star because they're the best of the best. So we want our classrooms to be the best of the best. So when the guest teachers come, which we call them guest teachers, they have a rating sheet and they rate us when they leave. They rate the lesson plans, so they rate the teacher, they rate the students, and they rate the administration to tell us if we supported them enough or give us ideas on how to help them. And then the students are aware of if they get a 5-star rating or not, and then there's a sign outside their door saying how many guest teachers have rated them 5-star. So we're having like a little competition to see who can get the most. And we talk about how just one bad experience in a place, if you go to a hotel or restaurant, that could just, ruin your reputation because one person's gonna go and talk bad about it. So we need to make sure that anyone who leaves our building leaves with a positive note and talks about JFK, about what a wonderful place it is to learn and to have fun. Another thing we did is second step social emotional curriculum, which Michelle mentioned. It's taught one time a week during class meetings. We have class meetings every single day, and those are to build relationships again within the classroom, review school-wide expectations, and ensure that everyone is following what we are asking students to do. And if they are struggling with that, then we kind of do lessons around how can we be better at this, what strategies can we incorporate. It's all about learning. And then the study circles we've done at JFK, just like everybody else is talking about. We have student leadership and ownership for their learning. We think it's really important that the students, like Michelle mentioned, set their own goals with the teacher, have a purpose. Like when they go to take a star, we make sure that they understand what the purpose is, what their growth is expected. We have student-led conferences now, which has been phenomenal. Students actually lead their own conferences and tell their parents what their goals are, what growth they've made. We have student announcers. So we're trying really hard to create opportunities for students to be able to be leaders in their school and to have voice over their school. We've also tried to do before and after school programs. Some of the programs we've done this year, we've done leadership clubs. We've done a girls group called Great Girls Group. And we have a group for the boys, Empowered Leadership Global Academy. And so they do their own kind of community service leadership activities, and they do field trips, and they bond with each other. And like Principal Hurl mentioned about how she's going to be doing that group, that's going to be dressing up. These students will come to school dressed up and be role models for others and talk about the experiences they're having. We also did some running clubs, origami, computer science, music, and sound. And anytime a student makes a suggestion or talks about something they like, we try to find an adult who will run that program for 6 to 8 weeks, just to make sure that kids are invested in their school and want to be a part of it so that they can learn to their highest ability. Let me see where else. We have building PD that we've been doing, which consists of the equity work that we've been doing throughout the year. And again, like you've heard a lot of these, we're kind of talking with the adults about the unconscious biases we all have, realizing that we need to reflect on our actions every single day, what we do, what we say, and sometimes we may do or say something that is a little off. We have to constantly be reflecting on that and be thinking about what our actions are showing others. We've looked at videos and articles and kind of talked about what is the message that is being sent out by those so that we're aware whenever we're watching things, how our kids might be viewing them. Our ELL teacher, Cynthia Romero, has done something incredible called Reading Around the World. So if you come in our school, there's a big map, and each week during our class meetings, once a week, the teachers will read an article with the students about other students from different countries around the world. so that we're learning. We want to embed within that multiculturalism and celebrate our differences and our heritages. So that's been incredible, and it's outside, and if you walk in, you can see all the countries we've been to, and the kids will walk by and talk about it as well. And we now have students requesting countries, which is fabulous. Talked about the goal setting, the pride in the school. I know you've heard this before, a lot of times we look at the data, and the data will drive what happens in the school, whether it's academics or the social piece. And one of the things we found was the focus on kindness we felt we needed. So we did a huge focus on kindness and talked about how important it was in life to be kind, and we are constantly highlighting that. And now we're working on self-control, because that often isn't a problem with our little ones, to make sure that they are thinking about their actions and how their actions are affecting others. If you go into the academics, we have a new humanities curriculum, which is just, I think a lot of the growth you're seeing in the STAR is because of that new curriculum. I was in a classroom today, and I'm going to probably start crying if I think about it, because it was just beautiful to hear. It was fifth graders. They're getting ready for, we're having a political speech contest. I think some of you are coming on Friday, and if you, or Thursday, sorry, at 10 o'clock. If you can come, please come. I promise you, you will be impressed with the voices these children are having. The topics they chose are, one student chose, they all chose on their own, the cost of medicine, because he has a family member who needs a cancer medicine, and it is very expensive. And he's talking about how that is an injustice. Immigration rights, gender inequalities, disrespect in schools, which I really loved, homelessness, child abuse, animal abuse. I mean, these are all students, and they're relating it to their life, and it is going to be amazing presentation. So please try to come if you can. And again, it's because that humanities curriculum that was created is really life experiences for kids. It's really putting what they know together with what they don't know and creating new understandings. We have the math workshop that we're working on, the implementation. The look-aheads, as you heard about, for all the content teachers. Talent, it's pretty much, it's nice to hear that you hear the similarities between all the elementary schools, because we do work together well as a group, and we're trying to ensure that the students get the same education, whether they're at Clover or JFK or Pequannock or OE, and as well as the teachers get experiences themselves. We have the one-on-one coaching cycles going that you've heard about, and we also have that STAR administration. After each one, the teachers meet with a coach, and they plan differentiated instruction for every student in their room, so the groups are all created, and they know what they need to do to help the students move. Again, the last thing is all the systems we were doing, which is we have weekly team meetings. We have attendance, literacy, math, and MTSS that they meet every single week to talk about students, to ensure that we have eyes on students academically, socially, behaviorally, and if there's any concerns, we address them as soon as we can with whatever they need. We're always looking for that programming that Tracy spoke about, that you can't just because you have a program doesn't mean you're going to use it with every student. You have to make sure that you look at what their needs are and figure out what is going to help them move and grow in whatever area they need to. Okay.
Thank you.
It's easier for me because they already talked about a lot of it.
You went over your time. You need a break? No, sir.
My calculation
Well, that was good,
I've been here 80 minutes with 5 people speaking, so not one person adhered to the guidelines, but I'll be happy to do that. If you want, I can just skip my 4 slides, save it for a question, and we can go right to Mr. Sunday.
Wishful thinking.
Or you can come back next year.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Seriously, they go right to the areas of greatest improvement because it's reflective of the 2 earlier slides when you compare the 15-16 and 16-17. So I'm really pleased to report that, as my colleagues before me have, our schools have shown, my school along with their schools have shown great growth. Just want to compliment too my colleagues, other administrators, for the work that they do, because our work is very hard work, and because of what we do and lead our schools in certain ways, it helps our teachers and our kids focus and achieve at these levels. We all have much more to do, but we're all extremely proud of where we are right now. So in the three academic areas, science, math, and language arts, you can see that in each of those areas, from last year to this reporting year, Sage Park and the group of all students improved in each of the categories. We're extremely proud of that. Physical fitness went up by quite a large amount. That kind of increase wouldn't reoccur. The large increase was due to the year before, where we didn't have enough students participate, as a little error occurred in how we accounted for kids. And so that obviously pulled down our score, and so that would never happen again. And this year's overall score, which was a really good improvement, but now it'll reflect where we are, and then we'll show incremental improvements. And in our absenteeism, as you've already heard, but at our level, the same procedures and practices are in place, and the same results are occurring. So there's decreases in chronic absenteeism for all of our kids, and for the special needs kids, it all went down. So that's where you want a decrease, and it's occurring. And overall, I'm pleased to feel that Sage Park is part of the overall growth of the district. We're in from one year to the next, our overall accountability index increased by 3.1%. So strategies for improvement, there's always things that need to be done. We broke them down into the areas that we've talked about. So academics, we're intentionally, this year, we're intentionally focusing on small group collaboration in math and language arts. So in addition to the whole class instruction, there's more emphasis on smaller groups occurring in the room at the same time, so kids could work more appropriate to their level. Also, there's focus on small groups and conferring with students of high needs. Each teacher has goals around those groups, and they have objectives now for the whole class and subgroups of the class, and especially now our high needs kids that need more attention. And we look at our data, as every school does, for our hard needs population, but for all the kids also, to determine the trends and what we need to do if there's any intervention that needs to be done. We're very fortunate, like the other schools, we have many resources that we can help service the kids that are not at grade level in either math and language arts, and when they fall in those categories, they receive additional classwork in those areas in an effort to get them up to grade level. And we look at that at every quarter, and kids that then move to grade level come out of the support classes, and those that now need it go in. So it's a very fluid process. They're not in there for the whole time, for the whole year. Then under climate, so we look at the benchmarks that others do frequently in order to provide needed support. You might be saying, so what are the benchmarks? The common things that we look at are attendance. We review the whole school attendance every week in a guidance administration meeting. We know which kids were out, what number they were out. Counselors make phone calls, administrators make phone calls. We try to get to the bottom of it if there's an issue, and then we try to figure out how to resolve it. We also look at our office referrals, kids removed from class. What are the trends, both student-wise and issue-wise? We look at visits to guidance and visits to the nurse. That's just some of what we look at every single week to check on how our students are doing. I'm proud to say that with Second Step, we were the first school in Windsor to implement the process. We started the school year with it. We were fortunate that we had a group of teachers that, along with administration, that clearly saw that there was going to be an important need for this type of support for kids. So we did the research. We had teachers lead the implementation, and to this day, it's tremendously well received. There's, as you heard, lessons delivered every week by grade level with different topics, and it's been very successful and supportive as we see our kids and how they handle the information. Parent engagement activities, we're really fortunate that we have a really good parent involvement, and we have an excellent family resource center leader who's now been hired full-time to manage both our school and Clover, and that we look at that as a bonus. So she's led many activities in addition to the traditional PTO activities. Just to name a few, we ran a workshop, Thrive and Survive, in the middle school. I've been doing that for a long time. Help parents figure out how to do it, because it is an experience as you work through each and every year there. We did internet safety as the district did, but we also had a gentleman, in addition to what was done in the district-wide, come in and talk to our kids. We've done multicultural nights and many, many other activities. I know that the elementary schools talked about their accreditation, so this is a sidebar and a little lead-in. So Sage Park is going through the self-study for the NEAS, which is New England Schools and Colleges accreditation process. It's something that every high school has to do every 10 years. Middle schools do not have to do it, but some do it voluntarily. And Sage Park is one of those schools. So we're working through the first phase of that process, which will take 2 more years to complete, but I'm very comfortable that we're gonna be, we'll be accredited as we have always been in the past. But that process allows you to lay out and really study yourself, which is what we're doing right now. Lay out a school improvement plan to address the areas of need. And by the way, the first 3 areas of need, just to make you aware so you will hear it, the teachers and the kids really need some air conditioning at our school. So I'm doing my last pitches as I'm here. That came out when we surveyed the teachers today, because we had, say, 30 needs, and we said, pick your top 5. The top 3 we can't put in our school improvement plan because it's not directly tied to something we can impact, but you all can impact it. So I just want to make you aware. One is air conditioning. The second thing is we need a school resource officer in our school. And the third thing, we'd love to see additional social work. We only have 1 social worker with a caseload of 80. That was just a little sidebar, so now I'll go back to the report. Under talent, we have the coaches, and we're excited about them. They work full-time, they do a really good job, and they're doing the things that you've already heard being talked about in math and reading and language arts. Thanks to Dr. Oliver and the support of the district leaders, we have consultants working to provide in-class support training for teachers. This is not a common practice, but it's an exemplary practice, and we're really fortunate we are at our level to have this occurring, because it occurs during the day, during regular department content time, and it's department specific, because teachers always complain when we do this whole thing for the school, but some people say it doesn't apply to me. So they can't say that with this professional development. So reading has been supported by an organization called Lit Life, math through CREC, social studies through Dr. Gabriel, and supporting them, all working, facilitating the workshop model in all those areas. And then, of course, science, we've also had additional class consultant support working on our next generation standards. And then systems, the last piece, we also have support here working through the MTSS process, but we're lucky to have Dr. Aaron Dunn from EastCon, who also comes in at specified times during the day to work with our team leaders to help them lead their teams in working through the process to help support kids. It can be a very complicated process, and it only gets better as you use it more. So we're just refining it so that next year in that area we wouldn't need any support. And then positive behavior interventions and supports, that's not a new program, and all of our schools have it, but it's really important to helping manage the school, and most importantly is creating incentives to help kids ensure that they follow the core values, which our school, they are respect, responsibility, and safety. And I'm really pleased, because sometimes we get lost in the sea of less than positive behaviors that sometimes get over-amplified by how it's projected in the social media and all the rest. But when you really look at the data in all of our schools, and then in my school in particular, I looked today because we just changed quarters. The third quarter closed, and those of you that have middle school students, you get the report card mailed home April 16th, so look for it in the mail. But we evaluate where we are with our kids, and 91% of our students, 91% of our students currently have earned VIP status. So that means there's exactly 69 kids out of our 710 that are in that status, so do the math. It's tremendous. We have a lot of really, really great kids. kids. Those that don't meet it, we work hard to help them understand what they do need to do it, and then we evaluate it, in 5 more weeks. So that's Sage Park.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. All right, time to spend. Any drops to click?
Still asking for stuff on the way out, right? Absolutely. Would be disappointed if it's not.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to try and make mine a little shorter than Mr. Cavallari. I know I was a little long-winded last year, so I'm going to try and make this quick. Obviously, we're very proud. I think when you take a look at these slides, you'll notice that Windsor High School made a jump in pretty much every category, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3. A lot of this work is largely built in the back. My colleagues who are sitting behind me built on the backs and shoulders of the work, the foundation work that Russell Sills did before I arrived. The biggest pivot in the work that was done in this area was really the responsibilities that shifted for the administrators who are sitting behind me in terms of their oversight of the strategies that we use to achieve these gains. Certainly our teachers were a significant part of this work, and certainly credit has to go to our students for stepping up to the plate. Another part that I should certainly highlight in terms of how we achieve these goals, last year we found that we had a dramatic improvement in teacher attendance. And certainly we know that students learn best when they have certified teachers in front of them. So that's a credit to our staff and the work we're doing at Windsor High School. So you take a minute and kind of glance at this. I know when I first got here, I had a conversation with Dr. Cook, and we talked really with that UBD design, where do we want to end up, with the end in mind. And we identified a few other school districts who really kind of sat in the middle to the other part of the state, and we targeted them as people we want to kind of pursue. And you saw a little bit earlier in Dr. Cook's presentation, there was a couple of schools like Newington and Weathersfield who are up there. Even though we have a different demographic population, we want to sit in that bandwidth or that demographic of schools across the state. To use the analogy that Mary Kay spoke about, that Zagat rating, I don't know if we're ever going to be a 5-star, but what I do know is that we're not a 2-star, so we're going to aspire to sit somewhere between the 3.8 and the 4.2, because I know we have some damn good people in that building, teachers and certainly kids. We definitely deserve that kind of reputation. So when you take a look at Windsor High School, because we are a high school, a lot of our high-profile data are really kind of backloaded, meaning you're going to see a lot of things that come out in the spring semester more so than the first semester. Case in point, we administered the SAT on March 21st, and I do have to give credit to Dr. Cook for making an unpopular decision. I know other superintendents were not as lucky as we were, but we were fortunate to be able to test our juniors on the 21st. And I'll explain why that's beneficial in a second. But on that day, because of meticulous planning by our SAT planning committee, we were able to administer the SAT test to about 92 or 93% of our juniors. Okay, there's only about 22 juniors who are yet to take it on the 24th of April. That date is pretty important because the snow date kind of pushed everybody else in the state backwards. The junior year is a very active time for students as far as standardized assessments. The juniors this year will be taking the NGSS field test, which is the Next Generation Science Standards. And that test right now is scheduled for the 17th or the 20th. If we did not administer the test, the SAT test, on the 21st, our kids would have been taking the test on the 24th. So you can kind of imagine what that looks like. NGSS on the 17th through the 20th, SAT on the 24th. A few weeks later, AP, because a vast amount of our juniors are enrolled in AP classes. And then a few weeks later, we have prom, and then a few weeks later, we have final exams. So we're fortunate that we're able to get that out of the way. The test on that day was amazing. Teachers all reported that our kids were engaged. We had a pre-meeting with the kids, kind of a pep talk before the kids sat down for the test. And then we had a chance to kind of brief with the kids on their way out of the test field. It was hard, Mr. Sunday, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So we're going to wait for the scores to come back. Keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully we continue to improve on the work that we did last year. We've done a lot of work around the NEASC report. We submitted that as a 5-year report, which kind of reflects the work that's ongoing, and in another 5 years, we'll do another update. This year, we also had a National Merit Scholarship finalist, which I believe is the first in quite some time. We've had some semifinalists, but Ava Peters was recognized with that distinction. So we're very, very proud of that work. So the strategies for improvement, it doesn't really deviate too much from our school improvement plan. We've been doing this work. We have systems in place that really kind of focus on the academic aspects of things. Learning walks is the accountability practice that is tied to our Tier 1 instruction, which is mainly focused on intentional planning, student-centered work. And at this point in time, we've had 40% of our certified staff cycle through learning walks, and they've visited a total of 87 classroom visits. We continue to do this work around data analysis, and this is very important for us because it puts us in a perpetual state of self-reflection and self-analysis for continuous improvement. The more we're able to see where we're at, the more we can really kind of shape the direction of where we want to go as a school community. We've done a lot of work in the area of culture and climate. We've had about 30 teachers cycle through study circles, which is our equity work. That really kind of equates to about 1 out of every 5 or 6 adults. We've had a vast amount of students cycle through it too. This year, in conversations I've had with the coordinator of the program, we've had some very, very strong student participation. There's a ton of other work we've done around equity. We've had workshops through our PDAC design around implicit bias. We have brought in Joanne Freiberg, who did a community presentation for us in the fall. And then you heard Tracy Peterson reference the work that we're doing through CAP as a district leadership team around really kind of shaping the profile of a Windsor graduate. So we're talking about students from K through 12. So we're going to continue that work, and obviously there's a host of things that happen at the high school level in terms of community engagement, community service work, our partnerships with community-based organizations, and then certainly our work around shaping academic climate with our students. We meet with them 3 times throughout the year. Okay? At the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, and we also close the year. Next year, we're going to be looking to implement work around restorative practices. So we're doing that training this spring, and certainly in the summertime. Talent and development has been a tremendous amount of work that's been done through department meetings, PLCs as well. PLCs we've had some challenges with in terms of meeting times. There's been some cancellations due to snow days or some other building-based activities that took the place of that work, but there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done through department level meetings. Additionally, at the leadership level, at the building leadership level, we've done a lot of work. We meet every bi-weekly as a leadership team to discuss major aspects of academics, school community-based events, and strategic planning around events. We also have a retreat that begins at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, and also at the end of the year. So this way we remain as calibrated as possible. We've had consultants come into the building. David Cormier has done work with us. Rachel Gabriel has done work with us. As I said, we had Ken Kay meet with district faculty and staff earlier this year. So this work is ongoing. As I said, the biggest piece is that we stay in a perpetual state of self-reflection, data analysis, having discussions about our student needs, so we continue to improve day by day. That's it.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Cook.
Yes.
Love fest.
So So thank you. Appreciate the attention. We went a little bit longer than we had planned to go, but we did cover quite a bit, and as you see, the principals are very proud of the work that they're doing. So we're open to questions at any point. I don't know if you want to go level by level or how you'd prefer
Just gonna
to.
open it up.
Sure.
Mr. Bosch?
I just have, well, actually, I have like 100 questions, but I'm only going to ask one. One question, one comment, one suggestion. My one question will be to Mr. Cavallari. I know you've been here a long time. This may or may not be the last time we see you at a special meeting. So I want to ask you, we're looking at this meeting at the data report for this year and how we're going to improve this school. But if you look at your younger self when you first came into the school system and you look at the aggregate over and over the years, what advice would you give to yourself when you came into the school system year one at this point in your career, looking at the improvement that you've done year after year?
I love that question.
And we're not gonna have time to like ask, we only have so much time left to ask you these questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one question is equivalent to 100.
Not sure if I can answer that specifically, but let me just say that I feel that the administrative staff, starting with the superintendent through the cabinet and then the principals and the other department leaders that are here, are the best group that there's ever been, in my opinion, in Windsor. Their dedication, hard work, and leadership, and we each work with each other to aspire to do better than we've done before. So I see that very different from where it was, say, 20 years ago. The challenges that each of us face and that the classroom teacher faces day in and day out, those are very, very different than 20 years ago. And it takes a really talented teacher, and we have many of them in all of our schools, to help deal with now, the ever-growing social emotional piece and intertwine that so that the learning that we all want and the scores that we want to see, that other things don't get in the way. But you have to address it, you have to deal with it, so you have to work with sometimes a little bit more challenging student that's in front of you. But we all adapt with the times, we establish new approaches, we stay up with the current research, and then we implement it the best we can, the way we feel it should be in each of our schools, because we're all really, really passionate about it. One thing that I think probably never changes is you're always trying, one of my models is the road to success is always under construction. So we're never satisfied with where we are, and we definitely have much more to do. What's especially pleasing about this particular report is, and I can't remember too many in the past, without exception, every school has a tremendous, many things to be extremely proud of. The district is clearly taking the right steps forward. It's in the right direction. The Board of Education, if I might say, seems to be a really good, strong working board. So with all of those things in place, it just leads to a lot of excitement and anticipation of what yet is to come, because we're not nearly done. And I know that the district will move to yet higher levels each of the next coming years. So I don't know if that really answered it, but...
It was an open-ended question for you to kind of share some thoughts at this point. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to, and I don't have another question, I'm going to keep it brief as well. I think last year at this time it was like midnight, and I don't remember what we had to do with our questions. But the one thing, and I think everybody really hinted at this, but when we look at these aggregate numbers of so many students together, sometimes it drives me crazy because there's a story behind each one of those numbers. And we're looking at this one slide that shows, the whole building, or in the case of one of the first slides, the whole district. And everybody's really painting the story of how we break that up, how we make it a story for each individual student. And I really like that. One of the things that I wish we could use as an indicator for our students is that student involved in something, that something may start with our school, but it may be something for the town. They might be in programs outside of the school and town. But if there's one single indicator for me, it would be, is that student involved in an activity somewhere? And if no, those are the students I want to target. Why are they not involved? What are they interested in that they can't get in the school, that they can't get in the town, that we can't find for them somewhere? Those are the students that we may be losing. Those are the students that may have long-term problems. But I think everybody touched on that, because I think everybody is trying to reach those students. I don't know how we get that as an indicator, but I'd like to see that. How many students are in the school? How many students are involved in something? But thanks, I'll stop there.
Ms. Blackburn?
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. First, thank you to the administrators and the team. Wonderful report. Just thinking back to when I first came onto the board and looking at the various iterations of an accountability report, and this is digestible, and just really want to say thank you also to Dr. Cook and his team for that. Mr. Bosch, in the same vein, as I was looking through the report, I was kind of thinking about that, like, wow, we are actually moving to a place where we can actually see where students are that might be falling under the radar, and we can find a way to actually catch those students and actually work with them. All of the graphs in the report definitely gave us the information that we were looking for, that we've been asking for. Not that I'm biased because it's JFK, I'm going to put that out there right now to all of the administrators, but Mary Kay, I'm sure Ms. Fissel will comment on this later, but that is exactly what we were hoping to see is, you know, in each category, exactly how many students are falling on that on-watch list or the intervention or urgent intervention. So thank you for highlighting that, because that also answers a question for us. So that was just my statement. Again, thank you. This is a lot of work. So just really want to say thank you to each and every one of you for the time that you put into that. And maybe I am a little biased to JFK. Did I say that one more time? Yeah, okay. I still love you, Michelle, I do. But my question is for Dr. Cook as well as the team. I'm just thinking about, we have here fall and winter numbers. I just don't know, in the spring, is there anything that we could receive, like right at the beginning of the school year, that we can look at, as far as, we understand you're going to do testing for the incoming students, but just, I don't know if there's something that could be put together just to let us know kind of where we ended out the year. And I think that would just paint the entire picture, so we could actually see that as we are starting a new school year. So I don't know how that works out, but just a question to pose if that is possible.
No, I think that's a great question. I see Dr. Oliver already shaking her head yes, so I better say yes to this then. So, but no, that absolutely is. And I think one of the things to point out with this is that we used to hold STAR till about as late as possible in order to hopefully see more gains. And we, in working with our staff and the principals looking at that, I think we've moved that up a little bit more earlier in the school year, because we know that students, when they get to June, we're dealing with some of those warm weather days. They're starting to think about summer activities and things like that. And so we've moved it up. So I think it's really given us a true measure. The other piece of this too is, though, even though we deal with the frustration of getting this report from last year in February, so we received this on February 9th, the SBAC numbers came out very early last year. And so we should be able to give you SBAC numbers, or in the summer. And so that's really our goal. We've talked to our staff quite frequently about STAR being a good measure for us. It's progress monitoring. It gives us really good information on students. But that SBAC is truly the goal that we're working with, even though teacher goals may be tied to STAR. So I know the principals have done a great job of keeping that message going, similar to the high school, talking about SAT and AP being their big measures. SBAC is really the measure. So that's absolutely something that after the administration of that test, we can give you the update. And it sounds like JFK's data is preferred, so we can look at it the way that's presented there and give you numbers too. And the one thing I'll point out on numbers, because I expect this maybe is a question as well. First of all, really a compliment to the team, because when you look at numbers changing, so I'm looking at specifically OE. You're talking about adding 8 students into grade 1 during the course of September to January, and many times students moving in, we need to learn that student. There may be reasons they may come in below grade level or above grade level, but they have to be moving some of those students as well with less time available to do that in order to get those numbers, to go from 63% to a 66%. We have 8 more students involved. You must be moving those numbers. And then as well with the literacy, Ms. Hurl pointed this out, but also in grade 1, because of the level those students may be on, they're taking a different test in September. So they're taking that early literacy test, whereas by the time we get into January, we've moved to pretty much everybody on that grade level taking the STAR test, the STAR grade 1 test. So when you start the school year off, if the student is below that grade level, they may be still taking a different test. So in fairness to that student, so we can really get an idea of where they're at. That's why you see 84 students in grade 1 in September, about 108 in January. So even though you may not see the percentage movement, there's movement within that area for them to be taking that STAR test. So again, really, really good work, and you're seeing students move through those bands, move from urgent to intervention or from intervention to on watch. That's really, that gets back to that growth model that we're looking at from the state in receiving those ratings. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it?
Yes, thank you.
Donald?
Thank you. I also want to reiterate that I want to thank everyone for all the tremendous work that they've done. For me personally, I really enjoy looking at how each school has gone from one year to another. I think that it's because I'm a bit of a nerd. But even more so, I like how you've taken those numbers and broken them down into something that really matters, whether it's the math or the reading, the early literacy, as well as the areas of greatest improvement, which obviously most everyone there spoke very slowly when they talked about the areas of greatest improvement compared to the strategies for improvement. Everyone I've noticed spoke a lot faster from there. So I think that's just human nature from there. So again, I love how we go from purely the numbers standpoint to break it down to something that really matters. So with that said, I'm going to go a little bit off topic for my question, which is specifically for Principal Hurl, in that you've been in your position for a few years now. You've gotten your feet wet. And so with that said, unfortunately, we will have a newbie coming in next year. And I would say that there's a pretty decent chance that whomever that person is going to be will be watching what's happening tonight. So what I'd like to ask you is that Windsor is a very diverse community. All the schools have so many different opportunities that other school systems probably don't have. Do you have any words of wisdom for the newbie coming in?
That's a great question. As words of wisdom, get some rest. Rest now. Find ways on a personal level to rejuvenate yourself, and because it will be tiring, taxing, rewarding, and hopefully, like me, loves the position. Words of wisdom: reach out. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Reach out to colleagues when you're dealing with staff, students, and families. Be honest, be transparent, be fair, but also be firm. Have a belief and a vision of what you want in that school to be, and stand behind those students, stand behind those families. The most important thing I had said before is to be transparent, but to be out there and to be yourself. Don't try to be someone that you're not. As some administrators had referred to, that they could have been Paul, that parents and students see, they can feel and they feel honesty, and they can feel some of the integrity and how you reach out. So I think most importantly, beyond obviously the academics is the huge piece, and that's why we're here to move and to educate students. But for me, the most important thing is to really build the relationships and educate students, staff, and families, the community, on these social and emotional pieces and how we are all connected. That's the
Okay,
biggest word.
thank you. I'm good?
All set, sir?
Yep.
You have questions? You have questions?
I have questions.
Ms. Fissel?
Thank you so much. So I'd like to first thank all of you for your presentations. This is my, I think, fifth time seeing you present in some capacity around your the accountability report and other names that it's had over the past 5 years. So it's nice to see the alignment from the buildings to the district to the state. And so thank you for being so responsive to both the requests of the board and also responsive to the state mandates, as I know that a lot of them go unfunded and put a tremendous amount of pressure on you as administrators and then on your staff. So thank you. So my first question is around generally, what is the assessment called for students entering kindergarten? That's an open-ended for whoever would like to respond. I can't remember. Is it the kindergarten readiness assessment?
So, because you get to come to kindergarten ready or not, there really is, that's the way it is, right? So there really is no assessment before entering kindergarten. We have typically done something we call a kindergarten screener. So last year we did something called the dial 4, the speed dial 4, and basically it's just an overview of where you're at, what skills you bring to the table, and it just allows us primarily to create balanced classes. But it really isn't meant to be an assessment of your skill set, because regardless to whether or not you can know it a lot or know it a little, we have the mandate, the charge to get everybody to a certain level.
Okay, great, thank you. And is there any consideration on determining like the early childhood experience that children bring in to kindergarten, and how there's maybe a difference or between their readiness for kindergarten based on their early childhood experience?
So we always acquire information like, did you go to preschool or not? We also do a parent interview as a part of that, so we allow parents to share information about their students, and then if they even want to have a one-on-one conversation, we offer that opportunity. But I would say we don't necessarily screen for, are you more mature or less mature? Do you have good play skills or not? Like, we take that as our responsibility to work with them wherever they're at and then provide them with those skills.
Okay, great, thank you. I had another question, a general question about for students who are struggling, what kind of communication do we offer to families about their student and what their needs might be, and how families can support their growth in the home?
Through classroom, teachers inform parents either weekly or bi-weekly through whatever form of communication. It might be through weekly reports, not so much a newsletter, but a weekly report, conversations. But when there are more serious concerns academically or behaviorally now, as we start to implement a student support team, SST, for behavior as well through the MTSS process. There are letters that are generated when a student is identified as in needing of tier 2 not enrichment, tier 2 intervention. A letter goes home to parents notifying them of that identification. And then there are also, I believe, bi-weekly, as they do progress monitoring, there are reports that are sent home as well. When a student is exited from the tier 2 and or tier 3, it'd be the same thing for tier 3 communication. The parent receives that letter as well. If a student is not exited, then he or she, the parent, would then receive an additional letter saying we're keeping your child in for another cycle, but data is shared with the parents.
Okay, great.
I would
Thank you.
I would just add on too as well, that's perfect, because that's what I was thinking of too, but I think the additional piece is there are a lot of teachers who will also contact parents to have them come in, and they will actually do like a lesson in front of them and show them how to support and do the work at home, perhaps like a fluency piece or something like that. As well as our coaches are always willing to do that too, and interventionists. So that, because I think you were asking about that too, like how would parents know how to support at home? So I think there's a lot of pieces of that going on behind the scenes as well. And teachers are always, as soon as they're concerned, they contact the parent to make sure that the parent, you know, is aware that there may be a concern. Maybe they will need some type of different like tutoring interventions work.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm, going to continue to remain concerned about the percentage of students who are not at benchmark or at grade level by the end of the academic year. I would say that the way that this is being reported now, between there's kind of September benchmark, January benchmark, kind of check-ins. I really appreciate that as a board member, because that is demonstrating that growth, and we're able to go. A few of us went to the district. The Alliance District Roundtable, and that seems aligned with the State Department of Education's focus on kind of this growth by cohort or by individual students, but also by cohort, which is I think more practical and you can use that to be able to demonstrate to the community that you do have kind of a handle, right, on the number of students or the individual students who are struggling. So thank you for that, and also explaining how you do communicate with parents and families. Okay, is that consistent across the districts in the communication?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
Okay.
Yes.
it's gonna look a little different at the middle school and high school, obviously, but I think both of those principals and schools put out pretty strict mandates that they want to see student dropping below 70%. They're getting some type of communication. I know Mr. Cavalieri uses a lot of different techniques, brings students in that are failing and communicates with their families. I've witnessed those conversations. Mr. Sunday and I have been talking about that recently too, in terms of a student has a D or F, there's a understanding that the teacher's communicating as well as the school counselor, and in a lot of cases are a vice principal.
Yeah, it seems like early intervention is applicable across all kind of professions, whether it's mental health or addiction, or even academically or social emotionally. Just get to them as fast and as quickly as possible, and then wrap services around them. That seems to be the approach. Okay, great, thank you. I just want to be able to articulate this as people may ask me questions after this meeting.
Before, if I can add to that though, Michaela, before the SST process, obviously, interventions had to have been taken place in the classroom by the teacher. So there is documentation showing whatever strategies and resources and interventions have taken place prior to any request for support for that child. So the teacher will have worked with other teachers on the grade level, looked at data through PLC and some strategies that way, going to the coaches for some work, our reading teachers, those kinds of things. So it starts from the teacher up, and the teacher always makes contact with the parents whenever struggling begins.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think I would also share too that we would always expect to see that triangle where there's students needing support, and we raised the bar going into this year. So we went on the STAR assessment from a 40% to a 50% going into this year. So we've done that. So you look at the perfect triangle being Pequannock School math, where there's 80% at benchmark, 15 on watch intervention, and urgent intervention make up 5%. So it's kind of meeting those different tiers, and we would expect to always see some type of triangle and need for students. But as we go through, we'd hope to raise that benchmark again in the future.
Great, thank you. I just had, I think, just two more questions. don't know if anybody else wants to ask a question before I continue.
I would like for you to complete all your questions, please.
Thank you. Okay. Just considering, I just had a general question, and maybe it can't be answered this evening. I'm wondering about the percentage of students, or if there's a way to track this, the percentage of students who remain on watch, intervention, or urgent on multiple years, and how that's addressed.
Noted, Dr. Cook.
That would be something, yeah, I have it. Yeah, we'd have to get
Okay.
back to you on that.
Thank you.
Ms. Sissel?
Congratulations on the school of distinction. I know you work very hard, and as Black Burke shared, I am absolutely biased around JFK. Thank you for the work that you do. I also want to speak to the work that's being done at Sage Park as well. I'm having a wonderful experience within the middle school with my own child, and at Oliver Ellsworth, because I have lots of children. The other, I think I had one other question. I just wanted to clarify, I think, I do want to, I feel like I do know this. So the second step program has been implemented multiple years in other schools, right?
Yes. You're right.
Okay, I remember the presentation with the puppets.
They were not the first.
Okay,
I cannot.
pay attention. All right.
There's a little competition, I've noticed that.
Okay, thanks.
We were just allowing him the moment. I mean,
I know, I was like,
He's the dean of principals, he's allowed that.
we're allowing him the moment.
So yes, K-2 has had second step. I believe this is the third school year. 3 through 5, as you heard, started in February, and I believe Sage started in January. But I will give Paul the compliment. He has developed the most the strictest monitoring program that I've seen in terms of making sure it happens. And he sits in on one lesson each week in a different classroom, as his vice principals do as well. And so, and he tracks that through a computer program. And so if the lesson is not done, he follows up, or somebody else follows up with the teacher and says, last week you missed your lesson, how are you making that up? So I do compliment Paul for his monitoring program.
I really appreciate that. I've been looking into Second Step as a social emotional learning curriculum that's endorsed by CASEL. Seems to be the leading kind of group following this at the national level. I'm not even doing CASEL justice right now, so bear with me, that's not my focus right now. But I've been looking into it, and I really appreciate your attention to implementation and fidelity to the model. It seems like that is something that's needed when implementing Second Step. So before you leave, I would just maybe ask that you share that system that you've developed across the school district, because I do believe that you have a lot of wisdom to share before you kind of head off into retirement. You will be missed. So you started at Sage Park when I was at Sage Park.
He doesn't want to admit to that.
I really appreciate your tenure with the district. So in regards to Second Step, because that is the SEL model or program in the district, I'm just wondering if there's been at the lower grades that have had it implemented for multiple years, if you've seen any sort of shift in school climate, if you could just speak to that, I guess, anecdotally. We don't really have a great measurement tool right now, I feel like, for an indicator of that, other than, I guess, absenteeism, which I see is decreasing. So
I would say it's hard to put any direct correlation, right, between any one program, right, because there's so many efforts that go into improving and enhancing your climate and equipping students with skills. So do I say anecdotally, do I hear kids able to articulate strategies around how they feel, how things make them feel? Absolutely. But I would attribute that to comprehensive efforts, family engagement, classroom teacher management systems, as well as Second Step. So I just would be cautious to say second step made
This program.
this.
Speaking to the implementation and fidelity of the implementation piece, I know that that's something that Oliver Ellsworth is starting to look into and have discussed actually as part of the building data team piece to place in part of our school improvement plan for next year, because we want fidelity of implementation. So what is that going to look like as we start to build schedules next year? So how do we make sure that there's a specific time built in each classroom schedule to have that done daily, and then do those implementation checks? But if Paul's willing to share, that would kind of lessen some of the load on that piece, so that would be nice.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that you're looking to have it like a daily lesson. I do believe that consistency and reinforcement is going to be really important, especially when articulating feelings, because oftentimes, right, we have a feeling come up, we have this physiological response, and then it's like right there in the moment, we have to be aware of what it is that we're feeling and then be able to name that, and that's how we can kind of get a grip on what comes next, right? The behavior or the word or the reaction. So thank you for looking at that. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Any have questions? Mr. Pelledo?
First, Mr. Cavallari, I hope you have a healthy retirement like Mr. Sanders, who I guess just recently passed away, who was, 20 years at...
Yeah,
28
years at Sage Park, right?
He was my principal, so that was a long time ago. Hopefully you will have as successful a retirement barring the last couple of years, I guess. I want to thank you all for making a wonderful presentation. One of the comments that Ms. Williams and I had a conversation over was the consistency in messaging throughout the district. That sounds like something that you guys are all working on, and I think that's a positive thing. We can only hope that the system of accountability that the state is using will stay put for a few years.
Absolutely.
And they won't decide to change their minds again in another 6 months or a year or two. And what I would like to be able to see is, it would be nice if we could have an idea on the cohort and how they progress through the grades. When you get to 3 years, you'll have a big chance to take a look at the 3rd to the 5th graders of the same class and how they've progressed. And again, thank you very much for coming out on this rainy night. Thank you, President Lockhart.
Anyone else? Ms. Fury?
I want to echo what others have said. Thank you for all of the administrators for all the hard work from school-based to our central office to get where we are here, and the sense in the community that we're going in the right direction. I know we don't like to talk about being an alliance district, but that's the reality that we were faced with several years ago, and it's great to see the kind of work that's going on. And we often start the meetings with talking about the mission of the school, developing, creating lifelong learners and developing the genius in every student. And I think from all the things that you're doing regarding climate is not just one thing, whether it's communication and the consistency of your communication, whether it's reaching the absenteeism issues, whether it's the family-community partnership and reaching out to parents wherever they may be, whether they want to come to you or you're going to them as well. I think we're getting to all of that to where we want to be. And I think where we stand vis-a-vis other alliance districts, shown in one of those slides, shows we're on the right path. And want to know that this board does support our teachers and our administrators. And thank you so much for your work.
Any other comments?
And truly just a comment and maybe a question for Dr. Cook. Just really want to, again, reiterate, I know I've said this during our general board meetings, that we kind of have to tell our own story. And again, tonight is another example of the information that needs to be out to the general public, to citizens, to parents, and in a way that they can understand it, and then they themselves can repeat and tell, you know what I mean? We just need to actively get this information out to the masses. So Dr. Cook, I don't know what the plan is with Ms. Herrick and the rest, but we need to let folks know what is happening through this district accountability report, because I just think this is stellar. So just wanted to state that. I know the camera's on, people are listening. We have to tell the story. Great things are happening in Windsor. I know we went to the Alliance District Roundtable and we got a great explanation, and people, I think, have tainted the word alliance to mean a certain thing, but at the end of the day, it has empowered us. It has allowed us to take that designation. Money has been really, I want to call it an investment into our district, and this is the result of that. And I get it, we might be on either side of the fence with that, but for me, it was an investment in our district, and this is where we are now, and the only place we can go from here is up, is just, a little bit further. And when we convene next year, hopefully we're going to see more bands of growth. So just really want to state that we have to get the story out there. Just keep repeating and telling the story, and hopefully we can do that.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn. Any other discussion? All right, well, Dr. Cook, I want to personally thank you. Thank you and your administrative team, principals. I've always stated I truly believe in each and every one of you. I don't think I have the fortitude to walk in your shoes on a daily basis of what you do, but it's truly appreciative of what you do. I will be remiss that these results were from, I believe, 16 and 17, over 15 and 16. So I want to thank the previous board as they laid the foundation for that work under the leadership of our past president, Ms. Santos. We're building on the work of previous boards as we move this thing forward. And we're going to continuously work to make sure that we lay the foundation for future boards, future presidents, future principals, future superintendents, to make sure that we keep building. We can't afford to regress in any area of education for our students. I want to thank personally Mr. Cavallari, as the Dean of Principals. You took the time to actually thank the other principals and to appreciate the work that they do. That really that touched home to me, because you're the most elder statesman of the group. And I mean that in 10 years as a principal in the district. I want to be respectful, but as the person and retiring, I truly appreciate your service to the district. I echo what some of the board members stated, and you're going to be truly missed. I appreciate you being under 10 minutes. That was pretty good. But in all fairness, I truly appreciate that. And to Mr. Sunday, I appreciate the comments you made as well, stating that your work couldn't be done without the principals behind you. So it's truly a collaborative effort up and down the district that takes every employee, whether you're certified, whether you're a security monitor, whether you're the custodian, I don't care what your role is in the school district, you have a key role in educating each and every one of our children. So Dr. Cook, under your leadership, I'm truly appreciative of you and thankful for everything that you're doing. With that being said, we're going to go into announcements. I'll start with Mr. Elvell.
None.
Announcements for the evening?
None, thank you.
All right. Ms. Blackburn?
Nothing.
All right. Mr. Halleck?
No, none.
All right. Mr. Dobler?
Nothing.
All right. Mr. Bosch? Nothing. Mr. Fury?
Nothing.
Ms. Fissel?
No, thank you.
All right. I'm going to personally say I try to be appreciative of board members. Mr. Bosch just recently celebrated a birthday, I think, this past weekend, so I just want to extend your happy birthday greetings to you and to the public. I also want to extend thanks for Councilor Jenkins for coming out to the meeting as well. I presented at the town council meeting last night, gave the Board of Education report, and I invited all the councilors to come out. So I want to make sure that I'm appreciative of them actually taking the time to come out and participate. And again, Ms. Santos, thank you very much. A lot of the work, stuff that you've done as a past board president was definitely reflective in this report. I must say that being president is a very, very difficult job. There's some big shoes that I am filling, but we have a very good board here that's actually up to the task of living up to the foundation that the previous boards and all previous board members have worked on also for the Windsor Public School System. So thank you very much. With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Elvell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Blackburn. Motion made by Mr. Elvell, second by Ms. Blackburn to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Abstention. Motion carries 8-0-0. We're adjourned.